Hello, Darklings, far and wide. Thank you for listening. And don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. There are a few things more powerful than a ghost story. Long before television, podcasts, or movies filled our nights with tales of the unknown, people gathered in flickering candlelight and around crackling fires to share stories that made their hearts race, their skin crawl, and their imagination run wild. Tonight, we return to that tradition. My guest is one of America's most celebrated storytellers. She spent more than 3 decades captivating audiences across the country, from major storytelling festivals and theaters to libraries, universities, and stages around the world. She's a master of weaving folklore, myth, mystery, and the macabre into unforgettable experiences that linger long after the final words are spoken. So whether it's a chilling encounter in the dark, an unsettling legend passed down through generations, or a tale that blurs the line between reality and nightmare, she knows how to transport an audience into worlds where anything is possible and where not everyone makes it safely back. So dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for an evening of strange tales, eerie legends, and the delicious kind of fear that reminds us why we love the unknown. Tonight, we welcome acclaimed storyteller Laura Packer to the Paranormal 60.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney.
You won't know. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
Hello, my Darklings. Thank you so much for tuning in and spending a little time. This is an exciting night for me. This is the 6th-month anniversary of me taking over the very haunted and historic Palmer House Hotel, Restaurant, and Pub. Go ahead and have a drink. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this moment with me. And in the tradition of what brought me into the paranormal to begin with, the fact that stories have resonated through time and shared with me regarding many different aspects of the strange and supernatural, I thought it'd be awesome if we could celebrate my anniversary here together tonight with a storyteller, to hear strange tales and fables, to learn a little bit more about her and why stories are so important to our culture, to our world, to our history. So joining us right now on the program, we have Laura Packer. Laura, thank you so much for being here this evening.
I am so happy to be here, Dave, and with Scully, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Listen, there are so many fascinating elements to the oral tradition, right, of sharing a story, an idea, weaving in reality and fables into kind of a seamless textile of wonderment. And not everybody can do it. It's not an easy job. And I've seen people get up and drop horribly, and I've seen people take me to other worlds when they start talking about these type of things. And I love that element. Why is storytelling so important, especially in today's environment when we're so easily, I don't know, distracted by 10-second videos and flashes here and there of things? Why is it so important, Laura, for us to continue following this tradition and sharing stories?
Because it's part of what being human is. Humans have been telling stories for 20, 30,000 years. We've been reading for just a few generations, watching video and TV for maybe 100 years. Storytelling is hardwired into us. It's how we learn, how we connect, how we build relationships, and how we tell each other that maybe there are things in the dark.
Oh, I like that concept. And I think that's why so many people tune into shows like this, is the idea that we can maybe transport you out of the comfort of your own life for just a little bit. And when we're done, you can turn off the lights and shut off your computer and you're safe. You're home. you don't have to worry anymore. Or do you? Right? There's still that niggling in the back of your head that what if what they talk to me about is happening here? What if it's
Mhm.
in my neighborhood and in my city? And I think that's why people are attracted to this, right? The concept that it, all of these stories, whether they're historic or haunted or monsters or myths, it could have happened anywhere with
Mhm.
anybody at any time. That's pretty powerful.
It is, and scary stories are universal. Every culture has ghost stories, monster stories, stories of the unknown, and the things that maybe you don't want to know about. We need to tell these stories so that we can maybe shed some of the fear, but also because being a little scared can be fun, and because it brings us together. And ultimately, they are stories that tell us of what we might need to be careful of. Maybe or maybe not, there's something in the woods, but walking through the woods alone at night, is that really what you wanna do?
Kinda. Once in a while, I do. But I walk really fast and I carry a
Mhm,
big stick. I think people forget, that this tradition isn't something that's just based around the holidays or
mm-mm,
camp, right? I mean, how many people think about the fact that in the middle of one of our most favorite Christmas songs,
mhm,
it stops and says there'll be tales and ghost stories and things of glories of Christmases long, long ago. People used to gather at any time of year to share these ghostly stories. And you think about how many ghost stories are associated with Christmas itself, from
mhm,
stories like It's a Wonderful Life to A Christmas Carol. There are many different haunting elements to tales that take place around the holidays.
mhm,
And
absolutely. I'm sorry, go on.
I was going to say, and I think that we forget that this isn't something that's just Halloween or
Not at
October
all.
or fall.
Not at all. There's a really rich and deep tradition of Christmas ghost stories, but it makes sense because that's the dark time of the year, and before Christmas was what it is now, we were telling each other scary stories in the dark to keep those frightening things out. I mean, if you just listen to some of our favorite holiday songs, as you said, "He knows when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake." He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake.
It's
That's
almost like a threat, isn't it, when you think about it that
it is,
way?
yeah. Yep. I've spent many years researching and sharing Christmas ghost stories or holiday ghost stories, and I love that there are creepy stories that are seasonal to every time of the year. Christmas time, Halloween, the summer with camp stories. In the spring, there are some really interesting old myths and legends about things that need to die in gruesome ways in order for things to be reborn, and on and on and on. It's fundamental to being human. We love these things.
Well, we've got 4 tales that you're going to share with us tonight, and we'll have discussions in between the different stories, but I don't want to pinch back much of the time, and I know that we've agreed on a 60-minute format, and I've told you sometimes we're known to go a little over. We call it the director's cut, so we don't have to be forced into that 60-minute window the entire time. But let's kind of start in the beginning, a little bit of the background of why these stories are important and what brought you to them.
These stories are important for the reasons that I mentioned and many more. But this first story is about how scary stories can bring us together, and they can also establish status. Um, Scary stories are very much about traditional scary stories are very much about what to do or not to do. I became a storyteller because my mom told me folk tales, um, when I was young, but my dad told me scary stories. He told me stories about UFO, alien abductions. He told me stories about haunted houses. He told me stories about all kinds of things. And then when I went to summer camp, those scary stories ended up being very, very useful because they're currency. The kid who can tell the good scary story, well, you're not gonna get picked on as much. You're not gonna have to, prove yourself quite as much if you can scare the daylights out of every other kid in your bunk.
Then let's begin, shall we?
Absolutely. This first story is, in fact, a story about summer camp. When I went to summer camp when I was a kid, I wish I could tell you that I was one of the popular ones. And I know that there are people who love summer camp, but I wasn't terribly athletic. I loved being outside. I loved swimming and exploring and all of those things, but I didn't really fit in. I was as happy with a book as I was with anything. Well, this particular year in summer camp, I was getting teased a lot. And so I was really excited when we were going to leave the camp and the bunks and the dining hall and all of those aspects of civilization and go up into the mountains and actually sleep in tents, actually sit around a fire at night, actually listen to stories. And so, to make a long story short, we drove up the mountain. The wheels of the van were biting into the gravel as we made our way up, and the trees on either side were thick and dark. Looking into the woods, you could only see in a few yards before the shadows took over everything. We got to camp. We set up our tents, and the director of the camping part of camp came up to us and said, "Kids, there are 3 rules when you're camping. Rule number 1, never walk out in the woods by yourself at night. Always have a flashlight. Rule number 2, never go anywhere without a buddy. And rule number 3, don't bring food into your tent because there are bears here and they will rip through your tent and come get you." I knew all these rules. I'd been camping before, but around me there was a ripple from all the other kids. Bears, bears, bears. I was assigned to a tent with 5 other girls, and as soon as we got to the tent, they said to me, "Laura, you're going to sleep in the back because if the bears come in, it'll get you first." Like I said, I wasn't the most popular kid. I didn't really care because I knew if these girls brought food into the tent, the bears would go for the food first. The counselors pretty quickly picked up that I was having a rough time, and for good or for ill, they decided to try and help. So they let me stay up later after everyone else went to sleep and let me hang out at the fire with them and listen to stories that they wouldn't share with anyone else. One night, everyone else had gone to their tents, and I was sitting at the fire with the counselors, and one of the counselors told this story. There is in Japan a great mountain that stretches high up into the sky. The top of the mountain is rough and jagged and seems to scrape at the clouds. And then it plunges down in a huge cliff to a deep valley below that is always in the shadow of the mountain. The mountain is called the Mountain of the Flower, and the valley is the Valley of the Lily, and people say that there are things there. But this is just a story. There was a young man who every year set out to visit his family who lived on the other side of the mountain. And every year he took the long journey around, a 3-day walk. But one year he thought to himself, if I walk through the valley, why, that will save me 2 days at least. It'll be a day and a night of walking, but then the walk will be done. It will save me time. And I've heard all those stories, but they're just stories, right? And so the young man set out on his journey. He walked along the path until it came to a division, one side going around the mountain, the other side going down into the valley. He paused for a moment and then walked down. Almost immediately, the world around him grew dim and quiet. The shadow of the mountain over the valley was so thick it felt as though he had stepped immediately into dusk. He looked up and saw the bright blue sky between the trees and reassured himself that it was just a shadow and walked. He heard the wind whispering in the trees, but nothing else, no bird song, no rustling of creatures in the undergrowth. And he thought, How strange, and told himself that the chill he felt was nothing, just a breeze in the shadow. He kept walking until finally he realized that the path in front of him was growing dim. The light, what there was fading. He looked up again, and the sky was dark. It took all of his attention to keep following the path, straining his eyes in that dark night to make sure he didn't wander off into the deep woods. And as he walked, he told himself there was nothing to be afraid of, even though the woods were now full of rustling sounds, chittering sounds, howls, and whispers. In front of him, he saw a little flickering light and walked towards it, thinking there must be someone there. And as he grew closer, the light grew bigger and bigger until he could see that it was a campfire. He came to a clearing, and there the fire was, crackling and popping. Over the fire was a grate, and on the grate was a can being stirred, clunk, 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 by an old, hunched man. The man looked up at him. "Oh," he said, "I never see people here. Come, come, sit down at the fire. Tell me what you are doing in the woods at night." And the young man sat down, grateful for another person. And he told the old man that he was visiting his family and he wanted to take the quicker path. And the old man said, "Ah, yes, I have heard the stories, but you are young and strong. Surely there is nothing to worry." And they sat there for a time until the conversation fizzled out. That awkward silence between stranger and stranger settled upon them. And the young man said, "Well, I'd best keep walking. Thank you." The old man waved him goodbye and stirred his soup. Clunk, clunk. The young man walked out of the clearing, following the path as best as he could, telling himself there was nothing to worry about. That nice old man lived here in the woods. In front of him, he heard a sound, a keening, wailing kind of noise. As he walked, it grew louder and louder, and soon it sounded as if someone was weeping, their heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. He came to another clearing, rich with moonlight, everything black and gray in the light of the moon, and in the middle of the clearing was a young woman, kneeling on the ground, her face buried in her hands, her hair streaming around her as she rocked back and forth, crying as if there were no light left in the world. "Miss," said the young man, "Miss, what's wrong?" And still she wept. He took a few steps closer. "Miss, please, let me help." And still she cried. A few steps closer, and now he was close enough to reach out to her and touch her shoulder. "Miss," he said, "please, what's wrong? Let me help you." And her weeping stopped. Her hands fell down from her face, and she looked up at him, or would have, but she had no face, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing. The young man froze for a moment and then stumbled back as she lunged at him, her fingers curled into claws, and he turned and ran out of the clearing, desperate to keep on the path, hearing behind him the sound of feet slamming down on the path's tree branches, reaching out to trip him, his breath gasping in his chest. And he ran until he saw that flickering light that grew and grew until he burst into the clearing, and there was the old man by the fire, who looked up in shock. Come, come, what is wrong?" The young man collapsed by the fire, trying to catch his breath, and the old man said, "What's wrong? What did you see?" "Oh, oh, oh," said the young man. "It was awful, the most frightening thing I've ever seen. There was a young woman, and I don't know how to describe it." "Oh," said the old man, "I understand. Was it something perhaps like this?" He passed his hand over his face, and his face was gone. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. The young man never arrived at his family's house, nor did he ever return home. The story doesn't say what happened, but this is just a story. Though in Japan there is a great mountain that reaches up to the sky and claws at the clouds, with a sharp cliff that goes down into a valley that has no light. When the story was done, the counselor said, "Well, Laura, enough is enough. Time for you to go back to your tent." And so I walked through the woods alone at night without a flashlight and made my way back to the tent where the girls were busy eating snacks. And I stepped over them to make my way to my bear bait position at the back of the tent. And one of them said, "Laura, where were you?" And I said, "Oh, I just heard the best story. Do you want to hear it?" "Yeah." And so I told them the story I just told you. And then I rolled over and went to sleep. In the morning, when we woke up, it was clear that these girls had not slept at all. There were bags under their eyes. They were grouchy and grumbly. And they said, "That story was so scary. We couldn't sleep all night." And I just shrugged. They left me alone after that. They didn't pick on me anymore. And Dave, that is how I personally learned about the power of a well-told tale.
Beautifully done. Let's
Thank
take
you.
a very quick break. We'll come back. Laura Packer has more stories to share on this evening of weaving fables into reality. We'll continue that right here on your home for all things strange and supernatural. I'm Dave Schrader, and this is our Paranormal 60.
Did you know that radio just got a little extraterrestrial? That's right, Dave Schrader is back on radio with the Paranormal 360 every Sunday evening, 7 to 9 p.m. Central on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station. Just download the Odyssey app and look for the WCCO logo, follow the station, and listen live. That's the Paranormal 360 on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station.
One of my fondest memories growing up was sharing stories with my friends. And I remember in Roselle, Illinois, where I grew up, Laura, one of the neighbors had a magazine and was telling us this ghost story from the magazine. And he showed us the magazine first, and we looked at it, and on this magazine was nothing but like an old, dusty looking attic with a rocking chair just sitting in it. And then the headline about ghost stories and this real tale that had kind of captured people's attention. And he goes, "You guys want me to read it to you?" And we said, "Sure." And he read us this story and then handed the magazine back to us. And there, sitting in the rocking chair, was an old woman that was not in the chair when the story began. And he would never tell us what happened. He said, when you tell a good enough story, it paints in your brain the images that your eyes can't see, and it fills in the gaps. And that always stuck with me. And it was so alarming that I'm sure as an adult now, there must have been a magic trick involved. Maybe there was another page, 2 pages back, and as he turned the magazine, he flipped the pages and let us see it that way. But I remember that freaking me out effectively 4 months. And I just was like, dude, she wasn't in the picture. How did she suddenly appear in a picture? And we would just debate about this fact over and over. But the concept that somebody could paint an image so clearly for you that you feel like you're there, or that the thing outside the window in the story could very well be outside your window right now.
Yeah.
What is it in the key of a good story that sticks with you that you're like, oh, this isn't just a story worth hearing, but it's a story worth cataloging and sharing again in the future?
I think really well-told scary stories work in part because the storyteller is a little scared by them. The storyteller has their own belief in them. You know, even if you know that it's a made-up story, there's something about it that grabs the teller and makes them want to have other people believe in it. And then the teller brings all of their skill to it. And there are certain tricks you can do to make it seem more believable. Like I mentioned the crunching of the gravel in that last story. I mentioned the black and white vista of that field with the moonlight. Painting really good sensory detail makes the story alive. As far as what stories we want to tell, different things are scary to different people. But I have a rocking chair here in my office where I'm sharing these stories with you. I'm going to give it a little side eye when I leave tonight, just to make sure there's no one else in there. For me, the stories that work the best are the ones that are presented with a little bit of delight. Oh, I love this. It's so scary. Let me tell it to you. And that's, for me, what makes it really come alive.
All right. Well, what is the next story that you'd like to regale us with?
Sure. Well, the stories that I'm sharing with you tonight are all mostly true. The story I just shared with you happened as I told it to you. And this next story is another story about being in the woods at night. And it was told to me by a friend to whom it happened. I think she might have exaggerated a little bit here and there. I don't know. But this is one of my very favorite scary stories. When we were kids, Anne and I were best buds. We did everything together. And one of the things that we did is we went walking in the woods. I was lucky enough to grow up in a city that had a good woodland, good park system. And so we spent a lot of time out in those forests. We told each other stories about the animals that lived there and animals that probably didn't. This was on the the mid-Atlantic coast, and I don't think Bigfoot was too likely to be in the Philadelphia woods, but boy, we had some good stories about him. And we grew up. When we were in high school, we went camping a couple of times together with our families. And again, we told stories, but then when we went to college, Anne and I drifted apart. It was through the magic of Facebook that we reconnected. She was posting a lot of pictures of different places where she'd been camping and of her life. And I friended her and we got to talking again. And in one of those conversations, I said to her, "So tell me, where have you been camping lately?" And then she said, as flat as could be, this was in a video chat, "I don't go camping anymore." Oh, it sounded like I offended you. I'm sorry. No, she said, no, let me tell you what happened. And this is the story that she told me. After college, I started doing a lot of field work. I got my degree in biology and I spent a lot of time in woodlands, a lot of time camping by myself. And I decided that what I wanted to do was to camp in every national forest in the United States and then every state park if I could. And I was having a blast doing it. When I got to the Pacific Northwest, I began to hear lots of stories about Bigfoot and all that kind of stuff. And all the campers had stories and all the rangers had stories. And we laughed at them and nobody really thought it was real. Well, I got to this one particular fairly small state park up in Oregon. And when I checked in with the ranger said, "Hey, be careful. People are reporting Bigfoot out here." And he laughed and I laughed with him and I didn't think much of it. I got to my campsite and I set everything up. I put my food up in the bear bag up high in the trees and I dug my latrine and I had everything set and I had a fire and I eventually got sleepy and went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night. I had to go to the bathroom. And I stumbled out of my tent and I knew where the latrine was. I'd run a line to it. So I went to the latrine and I did what I needed to do. And then I turned around to go back to my tent and the line wasn't there. I shined my flashlight around. Must have just gotten turned around. So I turned around a few times and there wasn't anything there. You know what they always say, if you get lost in the woods, the thing that you must not do is panic. And I failed at that. I turned around a few more times and my flashlight went from tree to tree to tree, this spot of light in all of that blackness. And I went by one tree and then went back. there were these long black fingers around the trunk of the tree. And as I looked, they slid away and disappeared. I walked towards it. I wanted to know what it was. And then I heard something behind me and I turned, my flashlight picking up another set of fingers pulling away. Only this time there was a head peeking out as well, all black. The blackest black I had ever seen, blacker than the lights, than the places where the light wouldn't touch, blacker than my closet when I was a kid and hid there, blacker than inside the caves I had been in. I walked a little faster, my heart starting to pound. And my flashlight caught it again, fingers around a tree. I turned and looked, the fingers pulled back, and then I saw it on the tree closer to me, these fingers with the face looking around, and I turned and I ran. I do not know what it was, but it should not have been there. And I ran as fast as I could, my flashlight bouncing around from tree to tree. And then on some trees, I would see it again and again. And I kept turning around, running as fast as I could. I was so scared. I didn't know what this thing was, but you know what it's like when all of your instincts tell you to run. By this time, I was completely lost. I had no idea where my camp was. I had no idea where I was in the forest. And then I saw the fingers on a tree in front of me. I turned around to run and ran right into a tree. I fell down. The world was spinning. My heart was pounding. My breath, I was barely breathing. I was so scared. And I thought, all right, I'm just scared. And I closed my eyes and took 3 deep breaths. And when I opened my eyes, it was right above me, looking down at me. And it grabbed me by the shoulders and started to pull. I must have passed out. I woke up in my tent. The sunlight was coming through, that beautiful color of light through tent fabric. I could hear birds around me, and I thought, oh my God, what a dream. That was the worst dream I've ever had. And I started to move to get out of the tent when I felt pain. And I looked, long scratch marks. I got up, I packed up, I pulled down my food, I hiked out of there, and I walked up to the ranger and I said, it's not Bigfoot you need to be afraid of here. I got in my car, I drove away, and I have not camped since. Anne and I finished our conversation somewhat awkwardly. What do you say when someone tells you a story like that? I reached out to her a couple times and she didn't write back. And finally she sent me a message and it said, Laura, you know my biggest truth. I don't think we can be friends anymore. I haven't heard from her since.
Giving people the willies, taking us out of the comfort of our home, back into the wilderness again. This time, not just a ghostly tale, not a haunting village, but you've got something darker, something uncomfortable that you'd like to think you might understand. As I was watching the live chat, oh, it's a Bigfoot story. Oh, it's this, it's that. But people feeling very uncomfortable. The key element they took from it was Laura needs to stay the hell out of the woods. That's the key that we're starting to see here.
See, I spend a lot of time in the woods, and I haven't seen that thing. But you know, I hope I never do.
Right. There's a power in stories as well when we talk about folklore and fable. That a lot of it was ways to control, because as much as people don't like to feel like they have a god or a boogeyman under the bed, a lot of times there are reasons for these things. They set parameters and rules so that we can stay protected. We can beware. You tell a kid, don't go down by the water, you might fall in, whatever. What kid is afraid? But if you tell them that something might reach up and grab their ankle and drag them under, suddenly it's a whole new nightmare for them, living nightmare, right?
Yeah.
But there had to be, in some instances, you would think, a nugget of truth behind these stories. And you dig back and, it's really easy to summarily dismiss things like the Slender Man. Well, it's just a made-up story for the internet. Or is it? Because as you start going back into different folklore and tales around the world, there are characters that fall very much into step with the visage of Slender Man. And I wonder if these things just show up cyclically to remind us and put that little fear of God in us, but they're based on something that really was seen and witnessed. Do you ever dig further back upon a story to see where the germination comes from? And are you ever surprised that, oh my God, this was a news story? This had some real meat to it.
I do a lot of that. So as a folklorist, it's really interesting to me seeing the history of these stories. So the story I just told to you, this is from Anne. However, in that area in the 1800s, there were stories from loggers of something called the hide behind. That would look out from behind trees. In the stories I found, it wasn't violent, but the hide behind has been around for a long time. And then if you go back even further into some of the indigenous stories, there are stories about forest spirits that are somehow deeply connected with trees. And if you are not there respectfully, then they will do things to you. I did some of my research work when I was in college, when I was working on a graduate degree, on corollaries between the stories that we hear now about aliens, about the Greys in particular, and about older stories about abductions by the Fae folk, by the good people. So from Ireland, but there are stories like that all over the world, that there are human-like creatures that will steal you, that will steal your children. And there were some remarkable corollaries between the Greys and the Fae. So big eyes, tall and narrow. For some of them, Scandinavian elves and good folk tend to be tall, or some of them are. Stealing you away and returning you, and you don't know what happened, losing time, a different conception of time. These are very old stories. There are Fae abduction stories going back to like the 1300s that I was able to track easily. Ghost stories of beings returning. There are examples from the Greek. There are ghost stories that were written down by Greek writers. I think there's something behind all of these. Now, whether it is something that we might call paranormal, or it's an explanation for something that we don't understand, or it's an entirely normal phenomenon, natural phenomena, but we don't understand it, so we think that it's other. There are more things in heaven and earth. I don't think that we know half of what's going on. I think that all of these things have deep meaning and resonance and are very old. So Slender Man, well, there have been stories about tall, thin monsters that have gone back for a long time. And even if you want to look at things that are more recent, Guillermo del Toro has had some tall, skinny monsters in some of his movies before Slender Man got started on Reddit. So all of these things, we use them as a way to, yes, create safety, create understanding, give ourselves a little fear. But I think it's also an attempt to understand the world more deeply, and to understand that there are many things we don't know. And something really weird happened to me. I don't know how to talk about it. So here's this story that's kind of like it.
All right. I know time is the enemy tonight because we've got 4 stories, 2 left. Where do you want to take us next, Laura?
I think I'm going to share the last 2 stories are both true stories of things that have happened to me. Like I said, I think the world has a lot of things we don't understand. And this isn't a ghost story. This is a story of another kind of surprising experience. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I had a lot of side hustles going on because being a storyteller doesn't always make a lot of money, and one of them was reading tarot cards for people. I set up a little business where I would go to someone's home and read their cards and then make a nice scroll and send it to them, and it was a nice side hustle. It was a good little piece of work, and I was good at it. I don't know, and I didn't know then, if I think tarot cards are anything deeply paranormal, or if they are a set of symbols that are, for those of us in the West, deeply ingrained in us, and so we know how to use these symbols. I don't know. But I know that I told people things that were meaningful to them, that helped them, that were sometimes cautionary, and that there were times when the cards fell out on a table in a way that I cannot put down to chance alone. Well, a friend of mine asked me to go and to come and do tarot readings at a Halloween party he was having. I was happy to do it. I dressed all in black. I made myself look kind of witchy. I put a black tablecloth down, and I was reading cards for people. It was what's called a 3-card spread, where you would lay out 3 cards, one for the past, one for the present, one for the future. And I did that for anyone who wanted it. And there were a lot of people who really appreciated what I had to say, and there were some people who were just drunk and wanted to know if they were gonna get laid that night or whatever it may be, but mostly people were intrigued, and most of the readings seemed to resonate with folks. After a couple hours of this, I was tired, I took a break, and then I went back to my table, and I swear it was just like something out of a movie. I was in the kitchen, but I could see the front door from where I was seated, and the door opened, and it was like the room parted, and there was this man standing in the doorway, tall, about the age of all of us there at the party, um, handsome, and he stood there for a minute and kinda checked out the room, and then he saw me, and he made a beeline for me. Again, there was this gap in the crowd, so he came right through. He stood in front of me with his arms crossed and he said, "You read tarot cards? You believe in this crap?" And I said, "Well, I read tarot cards. I've seen some really interesting things. Would you like me to do a reading for you?" "Fine." And he sat down, he had his arms crossed and a little smirk on his face, and I did the 3-card reading, and he was quiet for a moment. And then he said, "That was interesting. Can you do anything else?" Well, there's another kind of a reading called a Celtic cross that can give you a lot more information about the past and the future and the direction you're headed in and all that kind of stuff. And I said, "Well, I can do this, but it's going to cost you more." And so he paid me for it, and I laid out these cards. I had him shuffle them and then laid out the cards. I've done a lot of tarot readings in my life, and I've had a lot of readings that were striking in the cards that fell down on the table. But when I looked at these cards, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that he was planning to kill someone so he could get their money. I had no doubt about it. And I had no idea what I was going to say to him that wouldn't put me in danger. So I looked at the cards for a minute, and then I looked at him and I said, "It seems to me that what the cards are saying is you're considering doing something that you know maybe you shouldn't do. And they're suggesting that the outcome won't be what you hope it will be." All of the blood drained out of his face. And he looked at me like I had just used the most offensive swear words at him that I could have. And he stood up, he flipped the table over and used some offensive swear words at me and stormed out of the party. Everyone froze. They turned and stared at me, clearly wondering what I had done. And my friend came rushing over to make sure I was okay. And I told him I was fine, but that I had to leave. And that guy, maybe he should not be so much buddy with that guy. So I packed up. I've never read tarot cards for money since then. And about 6 weeks after that party, my friend told me that that guy had been arrested, though he didn't tell me what for. So that is why I don't read tarot cards for money anymore, and this is all true.
When you have an experience like that, something so deeply personal, is it hard for you to decide this is something I want to share? Is it a cautionary tale? Is it more of a tale of psychological warfare in a way? Because, when you say something like that, just somebody that does tarot reading or has sensitivities, one of the biggest nightmares I've often thought of pursuing that myself and wanting to maybe expand my horizons of sensitivity is the fear that I will run into something like that. And what do you do?
So that was 3 states ago and 30 years ago. I started telling this story 5 years ago, and the friend whose party it was has died. So I don't think it's terribly likely that it's going to get back to this guy that I'm telling this story. I tell it, it's a really good question, cautionary tale or psychological warfare. I tell it in part as a point of interest. I tell it originated because somebody wanted me to read their cards for them, and I told them I don't do that anymore. Someone who had known me back then. That was the first time I told it. So I guess it is somewhat a cautionary tale. I tell it also because I think as a cautionary tale, it is a reminder to those of us who sometimes can tap into things, which I actually think is all of us. I just think some of us admit it a little more. It's a reminder that you need to be careful sometimes. And the big scary stories, the movies with the haunted houses where there's blood running down the wall and the voice saying, "Get out." But I think most of us should leave if that happens. But paranormal experiences are often smaller and easier to overlook. I was talking with a friend about this today, that I think this stuff happens all of the time, and we just don't pay attention. You're looking for something and you can't find it, and then you say, "Come on, where is it?" And all of a sudden you know where it is. Maybe that was your subconscious. Maybe it was something else helping you along. There are lots of these odd little coincidences that happen all the time. And so I tell this story in part as a way to say, be aware of what's happening around you. Be aware of how you interact with things that you may not really know. And also I tell it because it's a creepy story. And it happened. I don't have an explanation for it, but that he probably shouldn't murder whoever he was thinking about murdering. And I hope he didn't.
Do you ever jump on the internet to search and look up information?
All the time, but I only knew his first name, and it was a common first name. So I've tried to track him down a couple times and haven't been able to. But
well, Laura, we brought him here tonight. Come on in, Jonathan.
Well, did you do it? Come on.
This is your paranormal life. Let's take our final break. We'll come back. We've got more to discuss with our guest and storyteller, Laura Packer. We'll do that next right here on the Paranormal 60. For 6 months now, you people have been hearing me discuss my ownership of the Palmer House Hotel, Restaurant, and Pub. And I have to tell you, after 6 months, I'm not so sure that I'm the owner. This building may own me. It's demanding to have its stories told. The spirits want to be remembered. And we'd like to share that with you. This Saturday, 1 to 3 p.m., you can come in and have a part of our haunted history tour. Our tour guide, Sherry Johnson, will walk you through the amazing history of this building, the Palmer House Hotel in Sauk Center, Minnesota. And then she'll regale you with the tales of ghostly rooms and things that do go bump in the night. And then, if you're still interested and you haven't been frightened off, she'll take you into the haunted basement for 90 minutes to 2 hours to investigate the history yourself and see if the ghost stories are true. And we would love for you to join us. And it's real simple. All you have to do is find the Palmer House Hotel on Facebook, check out our events tab there, and there you'll be able to find out where and when our tours are going to take place. You can pre-order your tickets. They're just $50 a person. Again, that gives you the haunting, the history, and a chance to investigate for yourself what everybody comes here to check out. This is an exciting thing, and I'd love to share it with you. And who knows, once in a while, I might just pop in with you. So go check out our website for the Palmer House Hotel in Minnesota, or check out our Facebook page and click on the events tab, and we'll hopefully see you there. It's this Saturday, 1 to 3 p.m. Welcome back to the program. Laura Packer is our guest. We only have time for one more story tonight, Laura.
All right.
Now, I want to know this real quickly. When you are coming in, should people start turning on lights right now? Are you going to leave them with a nightmare?
No.
Okay. So they should turn down the lights?
Yeah, turn down the lights a little bit.
Turn up the radio?
Yeah, turn up the radio, turn up your volume. And I hope this story gives some of you a little bit of hope. I've lived in 3 haunted houses in my life. The first one was haunted by a cat. And we knew this because the basement door would open and we would smell the cat. And my roommate had a pet bird who was always terrified in this house. That's not a very exciting haunting. The house I live in now is haunted as well. We hear someone walking around. They have a sense of humor. They say people's names. And then once when I was at home alone, they walked up behind me and said, "Boo," but no one was there. Excuse me. I want to tell you about my favorite haunted house. Some years ago, I lived in Kansas City, and I lived in an old house with my husband, and we moved there from Boston, and everything was fine and delightful. We loved living there. And after we got settled, we started having friends come visit us who would stay in the guest room. We slept up on the 3rd floor. And the first friend we had stay over after the first night there, when we were having breakfast, said, "What on earth were you doing at 5 a.m.?" And we looked at each other and we said, "We were asleep." "No, somebody ran down the stairs and slammed the door at 5 o'clock. You must have been dreaming." Well, the next guest who came said the same thing. "What were you doing at 5 a.m.? "Nothing." And so when we had another guest, we said, "The house is haunted. You might hear something at 5 o'clock." And they laughed. But the next morning, indeed, they had. Whoever was there didn't seem to want to bother us, but liked bugging guests from time to time. And everything was wonderful until it wasn't. My husband started getting sick, and he got sicker and sicker, and we went to doctor after doctor after doctor. And they said, "Oh, yeah, you're getting older. Back problems happen to people who get older. Yeah, you're getting older. Of course, your stomach's upset. You're working a desk job. You should exercise more. You should eat more fiber." And it kept getting worse and worse until one night at about 11 a.m., he was lying on the floor, writhing in pain. And I begged him to let me take him to the emergency room. Within 4 hours, we knew that he had pancreatic cancer. And you know as well as I that that is a fatal diagnosis for most people. And so it was with him. From the diagnosis to his death, it was 69 days. And about 10 days before he died, I was talking. He was very weak by then. The cancer had mostly stolen his voice. And I asked him if he believed in an afterlife. He said, "Yes." "What do you think it's like?" "Beautiful." "Will you let me know that you're okay?" And we both were crying. And he said, "I will." And then I paused and said, "You're going to have to be really obvious, right? Because I'm kind of skeptical about things, even though I believe in things, but you have to make it really obvious." And he nodded and closed his eyes and with a big smile said, "I know." He died 10 days later, surrounded by the people he loved best and who loved him most. And I was destroyed. We went back to the house after a while in the hospital. And over the next few days, friends came to see how I was doing. The next day, the very next day, 24 hours to the moment that he had died, we were all standing in the living room holding hands. And we drank a toast to him, let go of our hands, passed a cup around, drank a toast. And then I held the cup and said what I thought he would want all of us to know, which was that he loved us and he was grateful for us. And the cup went from hand to hand to hand. And when it came back in my hand, the picture of him that was on the mantelpiece fell over. Someone must have bumped it, I thought. The next day, a friend showed up, a friend who used to ride his bike, and my late husband loved bike riding. He set the bike outside the living room window and came in and gave me a big hug. And then someone said, "Laura, look." And on the bike were several cardinals looking in the window. Cardinals are when you're dead, the dead people who love you when they visit you. That's him, that's him. Cardinals, I thought. Whatever. And so it was. Small, strange things kept happening. And I kept thinking, it's just a coincidence. Someone with his name. I met someone with his name who looked exactly like him, who bumped into me and said, "Hey, I got to give you a hug because I bumped into you." Same name, looked just like him. No, it was just some guy I met down at a street fair. Cardinals, more cardinals than I could count, infested the street that we lived on. One day I walked into our bedroom, and I swear I'm not making this up, I could smell his fart. You know how it is when you love someone, you know what they smell like. And I thought, well, it's just my imagination, even though the aroma was in that room alone and nowhere else. And I kept thinking, none of this is real. I cried a lot. I cried until I was sick. I had friends who came and just did their best to keep me company, and I did not know if I would survive this grief. I missed him so much. I still miss him, even though it's been over 12 years. One morning, I woke up in our bedroom, and I'd been up half the night crying. My throat was dry, my eyes were puffy, and I said out loud, "You said you would give me a sign and tell me that you're okay. Where are you?" And I began to walk downstairs. Now, my first husband, he was a tall man. I am 5'1", he was 6'3". And in every relationship, you know, there are problems. And one of our problems was he did things that were easy with his height that were problematic with mine. He'd put things up on tall shelves. He would stand in front of me and I couldn't see around him. And another thing he did is he would leave the cabinets open, which for him wasn't an issue. Cabinets in the bathroom, cabinets in the kitchen. He would just close them when he went by again. But the corner of those cabinets was right at eye level for me. We had so many arguments about it. I made my way downstairs, ranting at him for not leaving me a sign. And when I walked into the kitchen, every single cabinet was wide open, including the one above the refrigerator that I couldn't reach without a step stool. I walked in and bumped my head and saw them all, and I began to cry and to laugh and say, "Fine, I get it. You're okay." After that, it wasn't so bad. I still missed him. He showed up again and again in dozens of ways, and now I believed it was him. I'm remarried now. He doesn't come very often. But more than anything else, what I learned from this is, yes, we love people, and yes, we will lose them, and it will tear us up inside. But if we are willing to look for it and to let it, the love endures. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us, Laura. If people are interested in knowing more about you and more about your stories and the work that you do and the courses you teach and the things that you're involved in, what is the best way for them to keep in touch with you?
If you go to laurapacker.com, you will find my website. My mailing list sign up just died today. So if you send me an email at laurapacker.com, I can add you to my mailing list. And you can find me on Facebook at Laura Packer Storyteller. And I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Laura Packer, if you want more stories and things like that. I'm so grateful, Dave. Thank you so much for this time.
Thank you. And we'll have to have you in here to the Palmer one night. Maybe we can do a night of storytelling, you and I. How about that?
I would love that. That would be so much fun.
Fantastic. Laura, thank you. And we do have a link for Laura on today's program guide. For those of you listening to the program in the podcast form, it'll be very easy to keep up because we always include the guest's link or links to their books and other projects, and we have Laura's link so you can find everything she's involved in. The tradition of oral storytelling matters, not because every story is true, but because every great story reveals a truth about us. They remind us what we fear. They remind us of the things we hope for, the things we believe, and what mysteries still refuse to let go of our imagination. Tonight, Laura Packer shared more than stories. She shared experiences that connect us to something older than technology and older than modern entertainment, and perhaps older than recorded history itself. The art of storytelling has always been how we pass along wonder, caution, mystery, and meaning from one generation to the next. So whether the tales you heard tonight left you unsettled, enchanted, or simply eager for one more story before the lights go out, they've done exactly what great stories are meant to do. They've stayed with you. Our thanks to Laura Packer for joining us and reminding us that sometimes the most powerful magic in the world begins with the simple words, "Let me tell you a story." May the darkness of our world be just a little brighter with the information that we share here each week on our Paranormal 60. Thank you all for listening. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like, leave us a comment, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And from the bottom of my heart to you, thank you for making me part of your world.